What's good, friends? List episode 109 of the Game Pass Gamecast coming at you. We're finally almost ready to get hands-on with Halo Infinite with its upcoming technical preview this weekend, and while a lot of questions will be answered during it, a whole new set of questions seem to be popping up as well. So, this week, we set the stage for 343's big weekend for Halo Infinite and what you and your fellow Spartans need to know if you made the invitation-only cut. Will the game be properly scaled across multiple supported platforms, and will the Xbox One remain a viable option to support the game long term? Also, the Coalition shows off some possibilities for the future with the use of Unreal Engine 5. Respawn is ramping up work on a new single-player IP, and much, much more coming up on the newest jam-packed episode of the Game Pass Gamecast.
Now the fun begins.
Budget.
Stop! You violated the law.
Welcome back to another episode of the Game Pass Gamecast, your weekly go-to podcast for all things Xbox, Xbox Game Pass, and, of course, PC gaming, including news, rumors, and conversations around them damn good video games. You can catch new episodes of the show when they drop each and every Friday morning on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, and all other major podcast services. So be sure to subscribe to us, rate us, review us, all that jazz I tell you every week, the whole rigmarole I shoot you, wherever you get a podcast at. And of course, follow us on Twitter at GPGC Podcast to stay up to date with everything regarding the show, video games like, and our dope giveaways. As always, I'm your host, Travis White, aka Travelus, on most internet platforms. Joining me as always on this beautiful Wednesday night, my partner in crime, Mike Peapack. Mike, of course, what's good? What's going on? And most importantly, what have you been playing, my man?
I have been playing a good bit of Valorant personally, but we also been getting involved on some Battlefield 1. And outside of that, a little bit of MLB The Show and stuff like that, but nothing too crazy. But I've actually gotten hooked up on my Switch, and I have been playing some. I kind of fell into a trap of buying a couple of different games on sale. But the one game, like the games I bought were the Crash Bandicoot games, because I used to play them when I was a kid. I remember the first time I ever played Crash Bandicoot 1 and then 2 with a couple of different mechanics, and then Warped. So I bought that on sale, and I've been playing a lot of that. Just when I'm like either in bed or doing something and just kind of need a portable gaming fix, like I have that. So I've been just kind of enjoying it since I got my Zelda Joy-Cons. And just been playing a lot of different stuff actually for once in my life. And the one game I haven't really played, much maybe the listener's surprise, is I haven't played Halo. So there you go. Turned a new leaf in my life for this week at least. Next week I might be back. You never know.
Right. Of course. I was gonna say this is very this is out of your norm of recent, at least. You know, it's a whole cavalcade, a whole cornucopia of games, maybe you want to say, of what you've been doing this past week. And for sure, that's the thing that, like, and I have that trouble with my Switch as well, but I have it with, like, PC gaming too, like with Steam. I mean, my Steam backlog is just, like, today even, like, I picked up, I saw Wario64 tweeted out that it's Sega's doing like a 30th anniversary for Sonic or whatever, a sale for their games. And Sonic Mania was $2 on Steam. I was like, well, yeah, I'll pick it up. Like, of course, you know, but am I going to get around to playing that right now, or will I ever? No, but it's just fucking there. And I get into that like hole where I'm like, yes, that's cheap, and yes, that's on sale, and there's a decent chance I may try that or want to try that for that price. Yeah, fuck it, I'll pick it up. But like, I usually try to, if it's with big games or if it's with console games I know I'm going to want to just sit down and actually commit the time to, I try to stay away from buying like multiple at the same time, because like I know my OCD kicks in, and I probably have a little like ADD as well in there, where like it's kind of a mix of both, where I'll get really fixated on one, but then I'll also like have this in the back of my mind, like I should be playing this other game. Like the perfect example that last time that really I kind of went against the grain with like doing what I normally try to is when Doom Eternal and Animal Crossing launched on the same day. And granted, that was like the main reason why I picked them up both was because the day they launched was the day that PA was first getting shut down. So like I was like, well shit, I want to play both of these games and I want to have them physical. Like I probably should just buy these both today, like just in case, since shit's starting to get shut down. So like, but then I had that like, I want to play Doom Eternal, but I also want to play Animal Crossing, like, and it's that weird where sometimes, and that's where my OCD comes in, where it's like, I feel like I'm not giving enough time to this game, or, oh, well, in doing that, I'm leaving this game hanging out. Like, so I'm there with you, where it's like, I try to like sway away from that, but at the same time, like, I'm also one to not turn away a like good deal. And like, especially it was that time of year, like recently, where the Steam summer sale was there. And I'm like, well, fuck, here's my wallet. Like, fuck it, just take the money at this point. So I'm right there with you whenever it comes to that stuff. But on my end, like you said, we've been dipping our toe into a handful of other things. I surprisingly, actually, you saying Valorant, I played a match of Valorant last night for the first time in a long time, and I was like, I can't commit to that right now because I know I'll just fall into the trap when I know there's like a handful of other things I want to play, like obviously what we're going to talk about later in the show, like Halo Infinite this weekend and things like that I know I'm like, yeah, I'm probably I want to play Valorant. I'm starting to get that little bit of an itch again, just probably because I'm seeing like you or like Mike playing it as well, and like other people in Discord hopping back into it. And I'm like, I had a lot of fun with Valorant. I could get back into that. Like, but outside of that, though, we have been playing a decent little bit of, especially me, a decent chunk of Battlefield 1. Like I said, it was one of those things. I kind of talked about it real quick last week, but had since, I probably put like, I think almost like 15 hours into it, like since last week, which isn't a lot, but still for a game that I didn't think I would put 15 hours into over the past like 5 years since it launched or whatever it is at this point. Like I never thought I'd give it the time of day, to be quite honest. And while I know most of the listeners at this point know me, and of course, Mike, you know how I am with games. Like I play a lot of different things. And for me to take a shooter that's 5 years old, that isn't like Halo or CS or, something like that, to go and dedicate time to be like, no, I want to like sit here for, like 4 or 5 hours and just play this game. Like that's it. It outside of obviously, like I said, CS, Halo, stuff like that, where Overwatch, obviously, like stuff like that I know I will want to already play and will play for a long time. Battlefield just isn't that until starting to play this game and like picking up for $5 on Steam and being like, I'm really glad I did this for $5. It's like, it's one of those like, well, you can't lose. And I'm sure that plays into it being like, for $5, I'm very much getting my enjoyment out of this. But at the same time, like, I've always kind of, and I think I mentioned this last week, I've always kind of like felt weird about Battlefield because I feel like it's like such a black sheep franchise in the world of like, in the world of like, compared to its peers, I guess I should say, like the Call of Duties, the Halos, the, whatever you want to throw in there for your, first person shooter, like comparisons that typically people will go to, even to like, you could talk about, like I said, COD, Halo, even one throw in there now, a Fortnite, PUBG, like these games that are these, live service based shooters, whether third person, first person, whatever. It seems like Battlefield has always had it always reminds me of the loud minority. where it's has a very strong, dedicated fan base who plays it, but it's not necessarily the biggest, and it's not necessarily, we don't necessarily hear about it, and that may be the EA factor where so many people are sour on EA and how they handle things and different things like that, and as well as, you know, DICE can be hit or miss in a lot of people's eyes with what they produce, but, you know, I think that may play into it a little bit, but, and two, I think people have just been so sour on Battlefield 5 and how, you know, kind of bad that was, and or poorly received, I should say, that, you know, I think people forgot how good, like, and how well received Battlefield 1 was when it first released. And I still think it's one hands down, one of the best looking games that you can get at that price point for sure. But, like, of this past generation of, hey, this game's 5 years old and you wouldn't know it, that this game is 5 years old. And I remember, I think I mentioned it last week, being one of those first instances that I noticed, you know, like, photogrammetry really being used with textures in these games on just at that point modern consoles, but like base consoles at that point. And it's just, it's wild to see that game still holds up as one of the best looking ones. And on top of that too, like, now knowing and actually putting some time into a Battlefield game, like, to me, guns feel great. You know, I love the bolt action guns in this game, specifically long range rifles. They feel really great to use personally. And, you know, there's a lot, I guess it really took me off guard, and I wasn't expecting to want to commit to a Battlefield game. And granted, there's issues, like, and there's some choices that they made when kind of designing either the UX or how you interact with, you know, party members and stuff like that. Like, the fact that we can, you know, you, Adam, and myself can be in a party together playing this game and queue up a quick match, and, you know, maybe two of us make it into that game and another person just is in a completely different game or not on the same team or something like that. Like, things that are at this point mastered and, you know, just complete norms for the past 10 plus years in, you know, matchmaking and things like that. It's just some odd choices, but outside of that, like, it goes back to, like, yeah, I paid $5 for this game right now, but at the same time too, like, I'm having more fun with the actual gameplay once I get into a game that kind of eliminates a lot of that. Yeah, the headaches are there. Yeah, you know, sometimes if we get stuck on some shitty servers or you know, DICE supported servers, yeah, it gets problematic and it gets annoying with cheaters and things like that. But once we actually get into what the base of this game is and the actual, like, this is the experience that we should have expected with this game, I have a blast with it. So it's going to be one of those games. It got me interested in buying Battlefield 2042 now, like, as I was not before, but I may give it a try now. Like,
now it's kind of on the radar for sure.
Right, exactly. And I think too the modern take on it too, which another thing too is I've really been enjoying going back and playing a World War I shooter at that point that, you know, I'm not. I tend to usually stick with modern shooters, like modern takes or settings with shooters. But at the same time too, like, I used to love old school Call of Duty, you know, like COD 2, COD 3, and then obviously getting into Modern Warfare and stuff like that. But, like, it's rare that we see now, and most of the time it's, oh, people want either futuristic shooters or they want, you know, modern versions of shooters or modern settings within shooters. But, you know, it's nice to have one of the, you know, previous World Wars represented, similar to how Call of Duty did Call of Duty World War II and stuff like that. So, you know, it's been a nice change of pace to play a game like that and have that feeling that, you know, back in the day, trying, you know, Battlefield 1942 way back in the day, that was my only real other true experience with Battlefield on my fucking parents' PC, like our family computer back in the day that chugged the fuck to play it. But, like, you know, having that similar experience now on a much grander scale is really, really nice. So it's been fun. Mike, let's end the button mash for the week. If you're new to the show, button mash is where we run through the quick hit news articles for the day and news topics to get you set up for the week before we head into our bigger topics and break all that down. We will get you caught up with everything that's going on in the world of video games. So, that being said, Mike, let's kick it off in button mash, starting with Mass Effect, of course, which I still need to get back into and play the Legendary Edition. I'm really disappointed with myself that I haven't picked that up. At this point now, though, I'll be honest, it's probably going to end up being like a Black Friday pickup because there is far too much stuff to play and the fall is going to be jam-packed. But eventually, I will get around to picking up the Mass Effect Legendary Edition because I've been holding off and playing Mass Effect 2 for this specifically. So, anyways though, a new Mass Effect Legendary infographic reveals that players are for the most part nice people. Oh, that's good to know. Although some of the choices made are still questionable. This new infographic reveals that most shepherds went through the Paragon route in terms of choice making, and it's good to know the majority of players saved Rex on Viramine and then went on to cure the genophage and pardon Tali. In fact, 94% of players ensured Rex survived on Viramine, and 96% of players cured the genophage, and 96% of players pardoned Tali, which is always good. A Dragon Age TV series, sticking with BioWare of course, is reportedly in, quote, active development at Netflix. According to a report from Giant Freaking Robot, the sprawling epic fantasy universe of BioWare's Dragon Age game franchises is the latest title to have been selected for a series adaptation over at Netflix. The streaming giant is said to be actively working on the Dragon Age series, even though it hasn't been officially announced by BioWare or Netflix yet. And this comes off the heels of Pokemon now going the live action route with Netflix. So more and more video game franchises are heading to Netflix, and I'm really curious to see how they do with the live action route with Netflix what Netflix, I guess I should say, does with the live action route with the video games, because we've seen how that goes with most video games, and live action doesn't necessarily mix. So, but they at least got it down pat with anime and down pat with, animation in general with video game franchise. But I digress. We'll have to see. Anyways though, alongside brand new screenshots, Playground Games has detailed the 11 unique biomes players will drive through when Forza Horizon 5, releases later this year. As revealed on Xbox Wire, Forza Horizon's locations are just as important as its cars, and Forza Horizon 5 is no different. The latest game is set in Mexico, and the team made sure that each biome was, quote, painstakingly researched and recreated by the team. Our team collects references from the locations and creates concept images that highlight the beauty and unique detail from each biome. We employ techniques such as photogrammetry to recreate the environments with precise accuracy, says Don Arcada, art director for Forza Horizon 5 at Playground Games. And we bring the beauty of the world in through the sights and sounds you'll find throughout the area. The goal of the artistic process is to make it feel like you're really there. Playground also confirmed that seasons, which first debuted in Forza Horizon 4, will also be returning for the 5th entry. However, each of the 11 biomes will experience these seasons differently. The team explains that, quote, spring means that the rainy season in the jungles and farmlands of Mexico, while summer could bring intense tropical thunderstorms along the coast. As for the biomes themselves, they help make up a map that is 1.5 times the size of Forza Horizon 4's. The biomes include canyon, tropical coast, farmland, arid hills, jungle, living desert, rocky coast, sand desert, swamp, urban city of Guantanamo, and volcano. Assassin's Creed Valhalla's Siege of Paris expansion will release on August 12th, that'd be a little bit farther out, 2021. The release date was revealed as part of the patch notes for Valhalla's title update 1.3.0, which is set to be deployed on all supported platforms on July 27, 2021. The Siege of Paris follows the Wrath of the Druids expansion and looks to cover the, quote, most ambitious battle in Viking history as Eivor and the warband attack the French capital. Alongside bringing back black box infiltration missions, it will also offer new weapons, abilities, skills, and gear. Here we go, Mike. Mortal Kombat 11, a game that we both really, really enjoy, has officially become the best-selling Mortal Kombat game ever by selling over 12 million units worldwide, which has helped the total franchise video game sales surpass 73 million console units to date. Warner Brothers shared the news in a press release where it also confirms that Mortal Kombat Mobile has amassed over 138 million installs worldwide. Fun fact, first time I knew that Mortal Kombat Mobile was a thing was right now. Quote, when Mortal Kombat launched nearly 30 years ago, I never dreamed it would grow into a franchise it is today with more than 73 million games sold, said Ed Boon, creative director at NetherRealm Studios and co-creator of Mortal Kombat. We have some of the most passionate fans in the world, and we appreciate the support they have shown us over the years. We've known that Respawn has had a few projects simmering for a while now, including a new IP not based on Titanfall or Jedi Fallen Order, but thanks to a new job opening announcement, we've got some new details. According to creative director Mohammed Alavi, Respawn is working on a, quote, brand new single-player adventure set in a, quote, unique universe. Respawn's new job listings include spots for technical game designers, a senior combat designer, and senior level designer. As you can imagine, the listings don't give away too much, but do give a vague idea of what is to be expected. Quote, this new single-player title is a designer's dream playground with a freedom to innovate made possible by the unique universe it inhabits, each job posting reads. Publisher Interplay Entertainment, first technically kind of, it's up in the air until it was figured out, obviously, had announced that a Twitter account claiming to announce a relaunch of the story developer is fake. A now closed account at Interplay Entertainment began posting last weekend, promising that a relaunch of the company with its earlier quote "by gamers for gamers" slogan reinstated would come in October, with a formal announcement to come today, which was July 28th. The fake account then posted a press release that claimed the relaunch company would aim to release new games in many of its best-known series, including Fallout, Baldur's Gate, MDK, and more. The release also claimed the new Interplay was actively working on 15 games, including Messiah and Clay Fighter, and would reestablish multiple development divisions. The release caused some suspicion, particularly as the lucrative Fallout license is held by Bethesda, who famously went to court with Interplay over it, and a new Baldur's Gate game is already in development at Larian. As expected, Interplay's official Twitter account, Interplay Games, subsequently moved to discredit the Interplay Entertainment account, saying, quote, we have found that there are accounts impersonating Interplay across social media platforms. Statements made by any other accounts do not represent Interplay. We appreciate those that have brought the offending accounts to our attention, end quote. And finally, Mike, Back 4 Blood, the co-op first-person shooter from the creators of the Left 4 Dead franchise, a game that we are both very, very excited about, will launch its open beta next month with a range of features, including the game's all-new PvP mode, Swarm. The open beta will begin with early access from August 5th to the 9th. During that time, fans who have pre-ordered the game will make up the majority of its player count. However, players can also register their interest on the official Back 4 Blood site for a chance to receive one of a smaller number of additional beta access codes during this time. Following this, the open beta will continue from August 12th to the 16th, where it will be available for all players. As for what's actually in the Back 4 Blood open beta, Warner Brothers Games and Turtle Rock Studios have confirmed that it will feature the following content: 2 maps for the Swarm PvP mode, 2 co-op maps to fight off Ridden with your friends, play as Mom for the first time, as well as other cleaners, Evangelo, Holly, Walker, and Hoffman. Play as 6 different Ridden variants in Swarm, including Bruiser, Wretch, Hawker, Exploder, Crusher, and Stinger. Various weapons to check out, cards to build decks, and Ridden to slay. Explore the Fort Hope communal hub, and of course, crossplay and cross-gen support will be there. So, for all that, Mike, anything in Button Mash you want to run back before we head into our big topics for this week?
Yeah, I mean, I know I personally signed up for the Back 4 Blood beta this morning when you sent us the link, so I'm super excited to get involved in that, hopefully very soon. As far as anything else from the Button Mash, again, I know I kind of said this a few weeks ago, but I do want to extend my congratulations to the team at NetherRealm Studios. Mortal Kombat's been going through this weird thing where they've kind of, like, Ed Boon is pretty active on Twitter, and I'm kind of always joust with the fans of the series because people have been saying, "Oh, I want this character to come back. I want this character to come back." Yada yada. And Ed Boon kind of does a really good job at trying to juggle, like, realistically speaking, like what the team needs to do to keep the retro fans happy. At the same time, he does all that he can to make sure that his team is getting to get their creative blueprints on the game a bit. And what I mean by that is, like, primarily his team getting to really, like, take or dive into the game and create these new characters and these new storylines and kind of intertwine them perfectly throughout the realm, because the Mortal Kombat universe is something that is pretty established by this point in time. There's a lot of lore, there's a lot of history about it, but they're finding ways to include these new characters in a really creative way. So Ed Boon's done a really good job at kind of playing the balancing game between both. So I do want to shout out them, because Mortal Kombat's a game that is so simplistic in nature, but I feel like it's almost like a fragile game, because they went through their wacky period kind of in the original Xbox with all the weapons and crazy stuff and, like, deception. And they've kind of gone away with that back to a more classic style, like 2D fighter, which I appreciate, because if it ain't broke, don't fix it, because there's a lot of other games that succeed very well with the 2D fighting style. But again, it's a big lengthy way to, give my kudos to NetherRealm Studios there. Outside of that, just Forza. I'm listening. I'm getting really close to buying a wheel and pedal setup for my computer and getting into some Forza. And I do want to dive in. I've read so many great reviews on Forza games. I've played them. I really like them. I think this might be the one that gets me to buy, like, a whole wheel and pedal setup for my computer here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, see, that's the thing. Like, I would be so much more into Forza, Horizon, I should say, and really any general, like, racing game. Like, for example, I have the Humble Bundle subscription. I got, like, I was able to get a discount, like, last Christmas, where it's like $6 a month for the membership. So it's, a little over $60, $70 or something like that for this whole year, and you get 12 games, every month. It's a no-brainer to buy it, kind of thing. And one of the games this month was Dirt 5, like the newest release that came out alongside the Series X and stuff like that. And, like, games like that have a more arcadey feel, even though that does tip more into sim, but more so in a rally car, I kind of feel like that's more arcadey to me personally. But point being, though, these arcade feeling racers that I do have interest in, I would be much more into playing them if I had the wheel setup and the pedal setup. Like, to me, that's I want to have that feel of playing Cruisin' USA at the arcade. Like, I want to have, like, that to me is so much fun to be able to sit down at, like, a Dave & Buster's or whatever and actually play a racer like that. Like, to me, that's the kind of setup that I'm like you, to get me into playing these games. Where, to me, I just don't have that feel. It's almost like playing Microsoft Flight Simulator. Like, incredible game, and I have it installed on I originally had it installed on my PC when it first launched, but I did install it on my Series X, didn't get a chance to play it yet. But playing it on PC, like, yeah, it's a really cool experience. It's really cool to actually be able to do the flights. The premise of the game, the game is incredible. It's highly detailed, everything like that. But sims like that and, experiences like that, to me, need to truly have those actual, like, peripheral elements to make them fully realized. Like, I think people, to me at least, how I handle, like, racing games and things like that, like, I just am not super into, outside of kart racers, playing a racer with a controller. Like, that just, to me, isn't as, I don't know, it just doesn't feel as good. Like, I would want to actually have a wheel and pedals and sit down and, like, do an actual sim experience with that. Just me, though. Same with, like, Microsoft Flight Simulator. I would want to have the I can't remember what it's called, but the thrust and the actual joystick to actually, like,
actually play it. Yeah.
Right, yeah. It's so, it does get a little complicated playing it mouse and keyboard, or, and I want to definitely try it out with controller because I feel like obviously it would have needed to be tweaked and ported properly to be able to play with controller and take that, something that is a very innate experience and very articulate experience on PC to be able to work on, a controller. And I fully have faith in Asobo for making that happen because they're wizards with that stuff. So I'd like to try that out. But point being that, like, what I'm like you, whenever it comes to that, I feel like that would be the ideal way to experience those games. But yeah, and then Back 4 Blood, like you were saying, we got the beta codes on that and everything like that. So we'll be jumping in. What is that? Not this weekend coming up, but next weekend. So I'm excited about that. Finally being able to get in there and play that fucking game. I'm very amped about that. It was a nice surprise this morning to be able to, get that link sent over to me. Like, oh shit, okay, we are able to get in. So really happy about that. But yeah, I think that's going to be it for Button Mash. So Mike, let's head into our big topics for this week. And of course, we got to talk about the biggest topic that's going on Xbox right now that kind of took everybody, really the internet, by storm. At one point, this was the number 3 trend in the US yesterday, which is wild to think. I didn't think it would be that that big, that we would see that. That's like, major like game releases don't even get that at times. So I was very impressed to see that happen. That Benji Sales over on Twitter actually pointed that out, that he's very he does a great job covering gaming metrics, whether it be sales or whether it be social. Like, he's really, really good at finding the data behind that, and him pointing that out is like, this is a huge indication recently when you compare these trends to actual support of the game and support from players of that game. It really lines up well for releases and whatnot. So of course I'm talking about Halo Infinite. We're finally going to be able to get hands-on with it. We're finally going to be able to try it out. We're finally going to be able to see what this game was. And realistically, we've now seen, for the first time, raw gameplay footage. And it's really interesting. We saw today with Halo Infinite, or with 343 doing a kind of showcase, a little bit of like a developer deep dive showcase on what we should expect with the technical preview this weekend. And it was interesting to see that they focused on a lot of different platforms. And I kind of want to dive into that a little bit today. Obviously, I want to talk about, hey, set the stage for what everyone should expect, because we kind of touched on that a little bit last week, but kind of wanted to re-emphasize a lot of that in what people who did get access to the beta, or I guess I shouldn't call it beta, but technical preview, the flight that they're going to be doing this weekend, what you should be looking for, what you should be reporting more specifically and everything. But I kind of wanted to talk about this game on a scalability sense. So James Carr over at GameSpot had a really good write-up, because we were able to see Halo Infinite gameplay, if I can get it right, running on Xbox One. And I think that's really interesting because of how big of an audience that is, that I think people are kind of having that go under the radar. So anyways, like I said, James Carr over at GameSpot had a really good write-up. So I'm going to pull from that, kind of set the stage, and we'll go from there. During 343 Industries' Halo Infinite tech preview livestream, the developer showed a snippet of gameplay running on the Xbox One. The gameplay shown was from a Slayer match showing off the first-person shooter running on the last generation hardware. The gameplay takes place on Bazaar, one of the new multiplayer maps in Halo Infinite. The gameplay is running on the most recent build of Halo Infinite, which will be the one used for the tech test this weekend. Quote, prior to this stream, we were able to put together a little bit of gameplay capture, and I'd like to give the folks a glimpse at this. Is going to be a Halo Infinite multiplayer match recorded, I believe, last week in the studio, community director Brian Gerard said. Just to give people a sense of, this is the game of how it currently stands in this build running on an Xbox One. Right now, we are getting a look at the friend versus foe system that we discussed in some of our blogs in the past, Gerard said. This is moving away from focusing players into red and blue, allowing us to maintain that unique armor customization that has become a focal point for Halo Infinite. I try and playtest on Xbox One as much as possible because it's a really important thing for us to support and make sure it's looking good, live producer Sam Harshaw said. It really is awesome that we were able to bring that audience forward with us. We know there are a large amount of Xbox One players out there, especially as frankly some people are still eager to acquire new consoles, Gerard said. Invites for this weekend's technical preview have already been sent out, and the tech test will run from July 29th through August 1st. The tech test will feature online multiplayer as well as versions of the Battle Pass and cosmetic systems. It's important to remember that this is a tech test, and the versions of these systems in the test are not accurately representations of the final product, nor will any unlocks carry over. So, like I said, we're finally going to be able to get hands-on with Infinite, and I think that's a long time coming for a lot of aspects. And I think Sketch really hits on a pretty important note, and that's the mention of, like I said, Xbox One being, this is a primary platform for this game. And obviously, when this game was first revealed at E3 2018, this was a primary focus. That's all that there was at that point was Xbox One, and then PC as well. But hey, for console, it's Xbox One. This is your main platform that you should expect a large majority of your audience to be on. I think that falls under everyone's radar now with how much focus is obviously on PC and, of course, Microsoft's newest next-gen consoles, the Xbox Series X and S. But considering the One is still Microsoft's largest install base in terms of, console support for this game, as, a lot of people, it's the argument that people have for cross-generational games on, for example, Miles Morales on Spider-Man Miles Morales on PlayStation 4 and 5, and a lot of people being like, does this game really need to be on PS4? And it's like, yeah, it does. Whenever we're talking 100 plus million PS4s out in the wild right now, that's a huge audience that you're, kind of ignoring. So when we look at that in the amount of consoles that Microsoft has from the Xbox One generation, we're talking a fuck ton of people having this console. And that's such a huge user base that is there. And that clearly is the largest one that you have, considering the constraint that we're having right now on getting the new next-gen consoles to as many people that do want them. The Series S is starting to become a little bit more available, but clearly a lot of people are wanting to buy the X. And that's kind of the main marketed one to begin with, as it is. So people are still struggling to get this console, which makes it even more important to have the Xbox One. But it feels like this is kind of just, sliding under the radar, that most people aren't focusing on it because specifically it's on PC this time around too. So first, Mike, obviously I want to, what did you think of the footage we did see? What did you think of what was shown today? Being the first real raw gameplay footage that we've seen. Actually, hey, here's the HUD, here's everything, here is an actual match that is being played right now, type of thing, compared to a sizzle reel or anything like that. From both, obviously, the multiplayer and the academy training, we saw things like that. And do you think this game will be properly scalable with 343's commitment to support across multiple platforms, and that support remains long term? Like they said, is the Xbox One still going to be a viable option for this game long term with where it stands right now?
Yeah, I thought in regards to the technical footage that we saw today, I was there were some things that I saw that would be a little bit of, or would cause me to have a little bit of a hesitation to, or at least curb my excitement a little bit. But all in all, I really thought that they did a really stand-up job at showcasing why you should be excited for Halo Infinite. I know I myself, as well as a lot of other people, have been very critical of 343 and how they've been advertising and showcasing the game. And I still think a lot of that remains because, again, we're getting ever so close to it and we've still seen very little. We're getting into technical betas or technical showcases, which is kind of cool, but still, there's a lot left to be seen. But just to go strictly based on what we saw today. So this is going to be little to no inferences made, or I'm not going to take what I saw today and run with this grandiose idea of what the game's actually going to be. I'm just going to simply talk about, what I saw as far as how it's going to be scalable. I think that the game, what I saw in the Xbox Series X, the footage I saw from that is pretty solid. I think 120 hertz, if it can continue to run at that, even whenever the map is full, there's a lot of stuff going on, there's a lot of explosions, there's vehicles flying around in like a BTB situation. Mm-hmm. I think that'll be a huge tell of where this game's going to go going forward, and if Xbox Series X is going to be feasible. Xbox One, I don't know. I mean, if you aren't, let's put it this way, if you're seriously into gaming and want to get the best experiences, you're going to be on a Series X or a PC. Mm-hmm. If all you can do is Xbox One, I think giving you the freedom of being able to customize some different stuff to lower the toll that it takes on your console, I think that's a really smart way to go about it. I was thoroughly impressed with a lot of the stuff I saw as far as the battle pass, the customization of the armor, even the gameplay. I think what I saw is really promising for casual fans. I think that it's going to do a really good job at bringing players in for free, especially. Mm-hmm. But I noticed they're trying to focus on retaining those free players by having a battle pass, but being able to skip certain tiers to get to different tiers. I thought that was really unique. Like if there's a challenge for you to get 50 sniper headshots and you're not very good with the sniper rifle, you can skip it and maybe kill 100 elites or 100 grunts or something. That's like, or maybe it's 200 grunts, but at the end of the day, you can play a campaign or whatever you want to play versus playing online multiplayer. I thought that was a really interesting take on the season pass model that we see that's rampant through video games right now. I thought the training grounds that we saw where you can kind of train your aiming and learn some things about the guns was really unique. Mm-hmm. So all of that being said, we saw most of that on a Series X, and I thought it looked pretty damn good from my point of view. Now I have a PC with a 144 hertz monitor, so I'm going to choose to play it on PC. But it does look like the 120 frames from a Series X. So long as you can get that, especially even if it's just in a 4v4 setting, mm-hmm. At least you'll be able to compete with people on PC. People on PC will probably still have an advantage, but the gap isn't going to be as big as if the console was locked at 60 frames versus 144 frames. I think when you're creating a service game like this, where they have made it abundantly clear this is going to be the game for years to come because they've been working on it forever, mm-hmm. I think it's very, very promising that a Series X runs it as well as I saw it run. Now, again, this is probably a brand new Series X right out of the box, so it's really fresh, nothing wrong with it, and they ran the game and it looked pretty good, and it's probably a more stable build with less fluff to make it look even better. We'll see what the technical preview brings. We'll see what the actual game brings. But I mean, I'm not overly ecstatic because we saw very little, but the direction that we're heading is promising. We're not driving halfway across the country in the wrong direction like Lloyd in Dumb and Dumber. Like, it seems like we're kind of in the right ballpark. Mm-hmm. So if your destination is whatever city is your favorite, if your destination is to get to Maine or Alaska, wherever the hell you're going, I think we're in the right time zone. So I'll say that. But you could be in the right time zone and you could be looking for Maine, but you could be in Florida. So I think being in the right time zone is a great start. We'll see where we're at going forward once we see more from the game. But little tidbit I will throw out there, because I'm the competitive fiend that I am with these games, I will say, for anyone out there that was looking, one of the biggest things you might have noticed is whenever you sprint, they got shields back and grenade hit markers were there, even though the competitive community has been bitching about that since Halo 2 Anniversary. It's just never really been a part of the game to throw grenades and get hit markers, because using grenades it's one of those things that from a casual standpoint, you're trying to inflict damage with grenades, more than likely clear out a spot with grenades. Mm-hmm. Competitive players Sometimes we use grenades for a lot of different ways. We can pre-grenade stuff to try to prevent you from pushing it. We're pre-grenading a hallway, like say on Halo 3 on the pit, we're nading long haul or green haul, and we're either got a call out that you're pushing through and we're trying to do damage and get a free kill on you and get an easy cleanup, or we're using those grenades to prevent you from pushing in if rockets are coming up. But alternatively, I can use grenades to force you out to a certain side. So say I know you're in a certain area, like Needler on the pit, Needle box, and I am in my Needle pit or my first BR, which is, closer to the flat where the flag spawns, and you were pushing through long haul, and I know you haven't gotten out to go towards like Mauler or shotgun spawn, I can use a grenade, throw it up there, and prevent you from pushing towards shotgun, but this way I know you have to be going long haul. So you can kind of influence your opponent's movements with them also. So being able to throw grenades into a random spot and get a hit marker and get confirmation that you're there is kind of sketch. I don't really like it for competitive play. But Quinn Del Hoyo, I'll use his real name. I won't call him the derogatory term I use for him sometimes. He actually tweeted that the competitive scene will not see that, giving us a little bit of solace knowing that some of these things are going to be customizable for the competitive thing, which goes back to there was a listener that commented on the YouTube page a few weeks ago that said that I got to pick a lane. I can either A, I hope I get the game that I want, or B, if I don't like it, don't play it. I gotta say, man, like, if you're listening to this episode too, I'm calling you out, man. I can pick my lane, which is I hope they make the game I want. And if they don't, I'm not going to play it because I didn't fucking play Halo 5 and I didn't fucking play Halo 4. So I'm just not going to play it if I don't like it. And if that's the case for you, if you don't like it, don't play the fucking game. I'm not going to hold a gun to your head and make you do it. But that being said, them giving us the freedom to customize the game that we want it.
Right.
I'm all for that.
Right. It's almost and not to cut you off, but it's similar to what I said. I mean, really for a couple weeks now that the mark of this being a good game and getting this experience, people want the Halo 3 experience, that level of not only, commercial success and, the zeitgeist of gaming at that point, but also, too, of having those moments of, I could go from 1 minute playing some, I could go from 1 minute playing MLG competitive map playlist and game type playlist to then switching and going and playing a, fan made or like a Forge made map of a racetrack or whatever, like with friends. Like that's where I see this, like having the bandwidth, and that's the mark that I think we'll see this being judged by of, is it going to be able to fit in that? And so far, like you're saying, like things like that make me feel good that that's what I want to see. I want to see, yes, we're going to have this because it is, like you were saying, it's, hit markers with grenades could be more for within the casual scene because you're looking to inflict damage and maybe clear out a spot or things like that. But at the same time too, like you're saying, cool, we're going to have that switched off for competitive play because you guys want it for X, Y, and Z. Like it's almost like the taco show commercial, like, why can't I have both, kind of thing. Like, well, you can. And that's where, like you're saying, it's a two-way street between the player base and the developer, where it's, they want our feedback and we want to give you that feedback. And it's, what I mean? Like, and that's where I'm happy too with you saying that. That's where I can see that. It's like, okay, well then too, you're not wrong. Okay, well, if that isn't, it isn't in there for you, like, and they go back on that and say, oh, you know what, we can't do that. And, certain other things, it sways one way or another in terms of the direction of where this game goes towards either a casual fan base or, still, in kind of ignoring their competitive fan base. Cool, you just won't play it. And that's okay. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. It makes total sense. And like I said, I mean, I kind of, it's like a half serious roast on that person who commented in the YouTube comments. Like, I really don't care if you feel that way, but I am saying, like, I chose a lane and I've been there where I just haven't played the game, and it is what it is. But yeah, I mean, giving us the freedom to customize these types of things is huge because we didn't play the base version of Halo 3 competitively. It was tweaked a lot. If we had that capability of Halo 2, things would have been different too. But now that we're going to have a fully workable Forge with PC capabilities, like I'm excited to see what maps people come up with. I'm excited to see where the game goes. That customization that was missing from Halo 5, being able to strip complete physics out of the game, the shoulder charges, the ground pounds, all those types of things were eventually stripped out of the game. Giving us the freedom to do it on release night is huge because the people at Esports Engine who used to run MLG, Adam Apicella, they're going to be able to get their hands on it. We're going to be able to get our hands on it as a community and figure out where we go from here. And it's also going to be great for the scalability of the game in general because you're going to be able to eventually figure out what you want to do and also create all these cool custom maps that all these games always normally have. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. No, and that's exactly like kind of my point with like what you're saying too, where it's not rocket science. Like, and that's where, and I'm all for, you know, hey, if developers are making this choice, that it's for a reason, X, Y, and Z. But I think when we get into what Halo is known for, what Halo means to so many people, it's so multifaceted that this game needs to be multifaceted, and it needs to continue to give players options, especially when you look at so many other modern first-person shooters, third-person shooters in general, multiplayer games in general, I guess I should say, that are either match-made or provide custom games, provide any kind of customization. It's in depth at this point, and it's a given, and it's so that these games could become more than just software. They could become platforms to a degree where they want you know, Epic develops Fortnite to be the one game you play. Like, period. They develop that game to be a platform first and foremost. I'm shocked that they don't already have some kind of, you know, a new PvE experience that is, you know, somewhat like a Destiny raid or anything like that they haven't added in there yet, which I wouldn't be shocked if they do at some point, where this ends up being, hey, you can get story content out of this. And granted, they have the ongoing, you know, whatever the season theme is at that point, or whatever's going on in their, you know, lore long term and whatnot, but more so where you can appease multiple audiences with it. You can go into creative and just build stuff. You can do whatever. There is competitive matchmaking now. There is, you know, you could do duos, you could do special limited time game, like things like that, where it's designed to be that one game that you play to fill so many crevices, where that's what you look at the formula used for so many major successful online games, and you see that they cater to multiple audiences. And I think that's what we need to see, like you're saying, with Halo. And it all comes down to giving more options to more people up front, where saying, hey, here's the keys to the car, go ahead and drive it. Like that. And I think that's what, for the longest part with 343, specifically whenever, you know, and we're talking more, I think we've seen a lot of really, really, really great changes. And I go back, no matter what people think about 343, no matter what they think about the state of Halo now, whatever they think about, you know, just where the game launched and whatnot, I give 343 credit for taking a game that was released multiple years before, launched to pretty much a broken state in multiplayer, where you literally couldn't find games or struggled to find games and whatnot, in MCC, and reinvested into that and said, let's make this a platform. Let's make this the experience that people want out of the box. And the experience that you're getting with MCC now is light years ahead of what was received at launch, to death, to reincarnation almost. And I give them all the credit in the world for saying no, because they could have just said, no, fuck it, just enjoy it here. You can buy each game individually in terms of, you know, the campaigns or whatever. Multiplayer doesn't really work, but you can try, like, and just say, fuck it, we're moving to Infinite. No, they keep supporting it. They've kept supporting it. They've evolved it. They keep saying, okay, what's your feedback? Okay, yeah, we can do X, Y, and Z. Might not be able to do that yet, but we'll keep it in mind. We're at least going to give you this for now while we continue to try to work towards that next one. Things like that we've seen so many different development teams and especially publishers pull funding and stuff like that too on that end to support this game, or to support a game, where we've just seen developers launch a game, support it for 6 months, and then move on to the next thing. Like that's normal. Where that could have very well happened to this game and started to happen to this game, but seeing Microsoft's commitment to saying, no, we want to make sure Halo is in people's eye, or, we want to make sure Halo is still in the zeitgeist of gaming. And it all starts with, hey, we're building towards Infinite. We have to give some people something to be excited about. They're not excited for Halo 5. Halo 5 is a very specific experience that you're going to get. Why don't we take, obviously the nostalgia pull and whatnot, but let's take what people really liked about Halo, this game that we have here that, yeah, we kind of dropped the ball at launch where you struggled to play games at launch. And let's make it into an experience that people can take forward with them into Infinite. And to be honest, even further, because shocker, people are still going to play MCC after Halo Infinite launches. That's going to be an experience that people still lean on to. I mean, it just is. And like I said, I give all the credit in the world to them, no matter what people think at this point, because that takes a big to kind of, okay, take the punches, roll with it, and now you got to pull yourself up and get to work, kind of thing.
Rather than just like you said,
they could have let it out to die.
Yeah, they could have just put it out to pasture and just like,
I mean, look at
packed it in.
Look at Ubisoft and like Hyperscape. Who the fuck has thought of Hyperscape since last year? Just being honest, like who? Nobody. That's a game that released, didn't find an audience, and died. And and in this case, MCC, a game that had an audience, launched. Campaigns were great. They were fucking beautiful to be able to move them forward. They worked like a charm for exactly what you wanted. Dropped the fucking ball with multiplayer at launch and stumbled to get it fixed. And they missed the mark. The train had already left the station at that point. And but to give them credit, it was years after, multiple years after, until they said, them and Microsoft said, no, we want to commit to this. There's something here that we want to make sure is something that, this is something the fans have wanted for a long time and continue to want for a long time, that we burned a bridge, we got to build it back. And they ate crow, and they still eat crow, but hey, listen, it could be much worse, and they could have let that game out to fucking die, and nobody could have access to those games, especially the legacy content of Halo. And now they do, at the push of a button, on every single fucking platform you can imagine. So I give them credit with that. And but I'm like you. I think that we're going to see, kind of circling this back, I guess I should say, to the conversation about the Xbox One. My only worry is that when this game was, because I know this game originally was, from my understanding, obviously my info could be wrong, my info could be outdated, there could have been a more clarification. This game was originally developed specifically for the Xbox One because of this game was in development before Halo 5 released, and early, now we're talking like, pre-develop or pre-production and things like that, and planning. When the response to Halo 5 was evident, this game pivoted quick. And they, from my understanding, 343 wanted to get this game out, not in a quick manner, but they wanted to, hey, we gotta rebuild. I think they saw the writing on the wall of something's up. We gotta fucking really figure the fuck out what's going on with Halo. And obviously a new engine was needed, everything like that, but this game was specifically built for the Xbox One until obviously COVID and different things like that. And even too, I think it was more designed to be a game that is taken forward to the new consoles more than built for the new consoles. But once that became evident, obviously that shifted. And I think once Microsoft figured out, hey, for sure we're going to launch this console in 2020, or that's the plan, then I think they kind of pivoted and moved that forward. But this game was an Xbox One game first and foremost. And I think that's important to remember with this. The only thing I worry with this game, and it's going to eventually get to the point where, like a phone, people are going to phase out of the Xbox Ones once more Xbox Series X and S's come available, or the mid-gen refreshes or whatever, that they're eventually going to upgrade. And they're going to get into a piece of hardware that is going to be able to support this type of experience. At the same time, though, from what I've seen, and two, I like that you were talking about the, 120 hertz output on, even if it's 4v4 and things like that. The fact that 343 has, within their coding and within, the way that this game is designed, to be able to have that scalability alone on various experiences that you're going to have within multiplayer, like we've talked about with Big Team Battle and things like that, that there's going to be a lot going on. That makes me feel good about the largest, and realistically, when we're talking true largest install base, it's PC, because there's a PC in every household kind of thing. Now, can it run it or whatnot? But also, too, there's going to be, you can now do, right from your fucking desktop, or right from your web browser, now you can just fucking stream a game. So realistically, every PC could technically run this game. But point being that from the console, the Xbox One's still your largest install base. And that includes the VCR Xbox Ones. Like, how many people are going to be able to play that long term on that, this game on that system? It's just, that's my only worry with that. But it does seem scalable, that we're seeing so many of these features that, we're prominently, hey, this is with the Xbox Series X and the S, but specifically the X, like, you're going to be able to see 120 frames per second and things like that come with these games that they were specifically talking about Halo Infinite with. That's great, but the ability for this game, the way it's designed, to be able to sift in and out of those experiences to whatever you're playing within the game, makes me feel very confident that this game was built to be able to accommodate a very large array of hardware. And that's and that's another big thing that I think is so important with the success of this game, because we're going to, for this game to be where it needs to be, or this franchise needs to be where we all think it should be, or, those of us who have been fans for a long time, I should say, everybody has to be able to play this game, period. And with the console shortages and everything like that, or the chip shortages to be able to manufacture the Series X and the consoles that people want to get, it's people not being able to get their hands on this game is obviously going to be problematic. So I'm very happy. I'm very, very happy that it seems like this is going to run pretty well on the Xbox One. Now, if MCC is any indication on the support that this game's going to get, which is great, like, we're seeing this game supported well via content, via updates, everything like that, we're eventually probably going to see, some texture upgrades down the road for the mid-gen refresh that we're probably inevitably going to get. It's going to scale up to 8K. Does that force the Xbox One out at this point? I would imagine so, but I would imagine probably more people, at that point, we're probably expecting to see the mass player base be, next gen or current gen consoles, I should say. Now, like, I would hope by that point that's where we see that. So I just hope people are able to get the same experience across the board. I shouldn't say same experience, a playable, enjoyable experience that is meant to be had with this game, because that's the beauty of Halo, is the gameplay. Nothing feels, it's like a Bethesda RPG, or, a Sony third person, like, narrative driven game. Like, there's a certain touch that you get with those that can't really be replicated. Kind of like an Obsidian RPG even too. Like, but a Bethesda RPG, there's so many that have sprung out from the Elder Scrolls and Fallout and stuff like that, that take that formula and try to, make great RPGs, and there are a ton that do, but nothing quite feels like a Bethesda RPG. There's a secret sauce in there that makes their RPG stick out. Similar to Halo. There's a specific taste to a Halo first person, like a first person shooter within Halo. And not everyone's quite figured out that at that point. And granted, I'm more aligned with the traditional, original trilogy style of gameplay, but not that, to each their own on the newer ones. But people have been trying to perfect that formula for a long time and still haven't really come close to it to a degree where nothing truly feels like a Halo game. No matter how, hard it's trying to be copied. But I don't know. I'm really excited for this weekend. I'm really excited for people to just get their hands on this game, to play this game, whether it be in the PvP, Academy, which I thought was really cool. I really, as somebody who, has gotten back into playing Counter-Strike with CSGO over the past 5 years, like learning different gun sprays and things like that, like have got me really into the tactical end of first-person shooters that I love to know, like, okay, I want to see how these guns shoot. I want to see what, is there a kick to it? Is there any, bullet sprays that I need to worry about? Is, things like that I think having this there, especially too when we see the gameplay footage of the Academy and the trainings and things like that, like basically having just an aim map that you would get in CSGO, or that a workshop map that you would be able to download in CSGO, like right there to be able to just go in and play and test guns and test your aim and, warm up with. That's great. That's what I want. That's what I want with more shooters. So I'm really excited to get in there. I'm really excited to check out PvE. I'm really excited to check out PvP, obviously. And, I'm just ready to get hands on with this game and see where I want to just see where this game is at this point.
Right.
So I'm really excited for this weekend. I'm really excited to see what it goes. So I'm hoping to stream some of it too at some point this weekend, but who the hell knows if I'll be able to figure that out. But I do want to get some gameplay footage at least. But anywho, Mike, let's head into our last news article for this week, and something I just wanted to touch on real quick because I thought it was really cool, and we we brought it up at one point a couple weeks ago when it was first announced, but now that we've actually physically seen it, I kind of want to just run through it real quick just to kind of set the stage for everyone. But the Coalition released what they were talking about previously is a new Unreal 5 tech engine, and it is really, really, really dope. It looks fucking fantastic. So this write-up comes from Wesley LeBlanc over on IGN. As always, give Wesley a click over there. He does great stuff. We always pull from him. So yeah, go over there, give him a click, and let's get into it. The Coalition has released 2 videos showcasing its own tests with Unreal Engine 5, and the results are quite stunning. The Coalition is the Xbox-owned studio behind Gears of War 5, and while that game looks really good, especially on a Series X, what the team is able to do in Unreal Engine 5 looks, well, unreal. During GDC, we got a glimpse of the Coalition's Alpha Point developed using Unreal Engine 5, which we last saw in the Lumen in the land of Nanite PS5 Unreal Engine 5 tech demo. Say that 5 times fast. Quote, first look at the hashtag Alpha Point demo, a tweet from the Coalition made earlier this week, reads, quote, an insight into what's possible with UE5 from its next-gen features such as Nanite, which allows for unlimited triangle budget, and Lumen, which allows real-time lighting with none of the traditional overhead tasks. The Alpha Point technical demo demonstrates a lot of next-gen visuals from ray tracing to realistic textures and more. It's yet another example of how games are pushing their graphical benchmarks, with the line between real life and what video game visuals are capable of growing even blurrier. The Coalition released a second test video alongside the first that focuses more on character rendering. It demonstrates an ultra-realistic face with facial hair, belts, and belt buckles. Just imagine what Kingdom Hearts 4 is going to look like in Unreal Engine 5, and more. We first got a taste of Unreal Engine 5's capabilities in last year's PS5 tech demo. Shortly after that, we learned that Xbox Studio In Exile would be using Unreal Engine 5 for its next-gen RPG. Then Sony spent $250 million to acquire a minority stake in Epic, which is the team behind the Unreal Engine 5. Earlier this year, Epic Games released Unreal Engine 5 alongside a new tech demo in early access, and a day later, a developer used the tool to render 10 billion polygons of his dog having a nap. The Coalition formally announced back in May that the Gears of War series would be moving to Unreal Engine 5 for, quote, multiple new projects, and then 2 months later, the Coalition announced that it would soon show off its Unreal 5 its Unreal Engine 5 tech demo. There we go, Travis. So now that we've seen that, we've kind of have an idea at least. It isn't a surprise to anyone to see, more and more studios moving to production with UE5. And the Coalition, has already been pretty vocal about their commitment to that, like I said, back in May. But it's nice to see a big first-party studio like them start to showcase some of their tests of this new toolset. Considering, just in general how cinematic and innately tied to the Unreal Engine toolset that Gears of War franchise has always been since its inception. The tech really continues to be this match made in heaven, I guess I should say, at least on paper. So, Mike, do you think we'll see more studios with the Xbox Game Studio stable potentially pivot some of their projects to what I'll call third-party engines, like UE5, to help facilitate production and have kind of a catch-all that they don't have to worry about, hey, we don't have to worry about developing our own tool set this time around. Let's take this tech that's here that's going to really help streamline our production and give us a very, very high quality, graphical fidelity with this as well, or be able to really take all this in a one catch-all experience like UE5? Or do you think we'll still continue to see larger studios in that same stable continue to modify and evolve their own tool sets or build new tool sets to keep their tech in-house?
Yeah, I could see some more development studios taking advantage of this. I know that's been one of the things that's been a drain on a lot of developers, and I know that's been a kind of a pain point for a few also. I know 343 was struggling with that with Infinite. I know that Bethesda is still using some outdated engines themselves, and I can understand the allure from a game development studio standpoint of wanting to have your own engine be what your games run on, because you can kind of tell an engine or create an engine to do exactly what you want it to do. If you want to be able to do this, just whatever you want to do. If you want to be able to blow buildings up like Battlefield 1, one of the big things with that is straight up blowing buildings up, which I think is pretty cool. If you're a developer, you can simply, straight up develop the game, the engine to do exactly what you want it to do. If you have a certain feature to a game you want to add, like with Gears of War, when you could hide behind cover when no other shooters could do that yet, besides, Rainbow Six Vegas, but you wanted bodies to fly apart whenever you shot them, make your own engine. I think the Unreal Engine has been one that a lot of developers have used in the past. I know a lot of my favorite games have used the Unreal Engine. I could see, I don't see why it wouldn't be, I don't see, exactly why development studios wouldn't decide to make or to use UE5 if it's at their disposal. It takes a lot of the hard legwork out. If you can understand how to utilize UE5, you can kind of take a lot of the tech legwork out of it. And it depends on how your development studio's built. If you have a lot of developers that are there that they can create a whole new engine, or if that's what you want to do, use one of your old engines and tweak it, by all means, that's up to you because you're the developer. You can do what you want to do. But I think this might free up some developers to just focus on gameplay or story if that's what they want, and things of that nature that sometimes get swept under the rug. I feel like you can kind of see those things just kind of get brushed off to the side. But I would be curious to see, what they can do if UE5 is at their disposal for certain games that, you could download UE4 and go in and play with the Unreal Engine, for free, if you have the Epic Game Store. So it'll just be interesting to see, but I don't see why more studios wouldn't turn to the Unreal Engine, especially with it being groundbreaking, because we see all the issues EA is having with Frostbite. FIFA's on Frostbite engine, but they haven't been able to put an NHL on Frostbite. So there's a whole slew of issues that come with developing these types of engines. So if you can just remove that legwork, if their engine can accommodate what you want it to do, why not use it? It just takes a lot of a lot of possible headaches out. But on the flip side of that, I will say maybe you won't have the best or the most how am I trying to put this? Maybe you won't have quite as good of an understanding of the engine. And that's where, you can kind of get into trouble there. But all things considered, you can kind of probably get around that, especially if you're a Microsoft team and you have access to the team that built the engine. If you're in the same neighborhood as them or whatever, you can kind of lean on them and be like, hey, I have this issue. How do I fix it? Type of thing. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. No, definitely. And I think that's what we're eventually going to see. I think this new character creation tool set that they have and generator and the ability to really streamline the process of making character models within the, what do I want to say? Really streamlining that process with Unreal Engine 5 that Unreal Engine 5 offers, I think is going to be really one of the sticking points. Same with, obviously, the Lumen technology and, the ability to basically have unlimited triangles within your geometry at this point. That I think is really going to have that as a catch-all in a package that is offered to developers. I think we're going to see a lot more eventually shift that way. And granted, you brought up Bethesda, and that's a really good example to give, because outside of them making major changes this time around for Starfield and Elder Scrolls 6, they're still technically using the same engine, which isn't a bad thing. It's hey, they update the technology as it goes along, just like for the longest time the Halo series up until Halo Infinite was using, in some fashion, whether obviously it's been modified over time, but a version of the original Halo CE engine, and it was just updated, modified, and the technology was brought updated and to fit modern consoles and what they were, the scope of the games that they were working on and whatnot. But it still was the same technology. But you look at how long it took, for example, 343 to make the Slipspace engine that they are just finished making a few years ago. It took 2 years of development alone, I believe, just to make that engine. And it's like, okay, that's 2 years of development that you're committing to making this tool set to be able to produce this game. That's a lot of time. And not that it's, man hours lost or anything like that. It's the fact that that's time that you could have said, okay, and it's not like Unreal Engine, like the Unreal Engine is a foreign, kind of offshoot game engine that is kind of in the pockets of the development community that uses it. No, it's like one of the most popular game engines in the world to use, that's so readily available, has a just detailed, even for hobbyists like myself, Adam, whoever, you're able to just go on there and pull assets right from the store. That if you're not an artist, but you're good with, you want to test out some gray boxing and things like that, you can go and buy assets. Or just, hey, I'm a programmer at heart. I don't do music or art. Cool. I can go and buy assets to make my game. That just is what it is. It's very, very inclusive to so many different areas. And more importantly, it's an engine that so many people use, probably because of its not only, power that you're going to be able to get out of the tech, but the fact of the production streamline that comes along with it. And that's where I think, too, it makes it interesting to think about with Xbox and the Xbox Game Studios, how that plays in with Game Pass. Because we hear so many times people say, the $150 million budget for a game isn't going to be, as it gets bigger and pushes to 200 million, these $200 million budget games, going on a subscription service for $9.99 a month is going to be sustainable long term, or this or that, or whatever. Well, that's where we might be able to trim some of the fat in terms of the amount of time it takes to produce these games and develop these games, or two, in addition to that, make these more, not bite-sized experiences, but make more experiences that are a little more streamlined, that let you produce multiple games over, years. Like, not one game and boom, you release a game and the follow-up is 6 years later. And that's, we're talking a 4 to 6 year cycle is pretty common within AAA gaming. Look at, for an example, the Spider-Man Miles Morales. We looked at a 2-year gap window between there because the scope of the project, while the project was, when you actually look down and look at the details that in the tech that was in Miles Morales was improved, was brought forward, did see new things like ray tracing and things like that built into the game for PS5. Like, it borrowed a lot of assets, but at the same time too, it also was a more streamlined experience. Like, the scope was a little bit smaller than, Spider-Man PS4. It was focused on, a certain part of the map compared to a big sprawling New York where, yeah, it's a game that, sure, you could, do 100% of it in 20 hours or whatever, but you could also buy the game for $40. And you could also, it may be a more, just because it's, hey, I can 100% the game in 20 to 30 hours, doesn't necessarily mean that's a bad thing if you get 10 hours of just playing the main story, if it's concise and the pacing's good and everything like that. Like, that's a good thing. One of my biggest problems with some games now is that there's too much stuff to do. I mean, look at fucking Assassin's Creed. Like, love those games, but there's a how can somebody ever have the time to do everything in that game? You can't, unless that's the only game you play for a year and a half. Like, period. So it's like, I'm curious to see how that plays in with the Game Pass model and the scope of games and things like that. And I think there's a portion of that conversation where Unreal and the development, there we go, Travis, the development process within games is kind of evaluated and all that, with scope of games and things like that. So I'm curious to see how that kind of plays in and how many games or how many development staffs, kind of pick to go maybe that route to, help with productivity, help with streamlining, help with, producing these games on a little bit tighter budget to maybe help, eliminating crunch. And I know that's a lot to kind of like a lot of leaps in logic to make there, but it is more than just, oh yeah, this is really powerful. It's really powerful, but it also is more so you're going to be able to take less time making the projects that you truly want to make, the ideas that you truly have. So I'm really excited to see kind of where that goes, just in gaming in general. Take Xbox out of it, but obviously, like I said, with Game Pass, I'm super interested to see how that philosophy, that mindset kind of applies to that. But I digress. Mike, let's end the party chat before we wrap up the episode this week. If you're new to the show, party chat's where we propose one question at the end of each week of the show that we want to just discuss with you. Could be as simple as what's your favorite story beat in the game. Could be a little more in depth as to, negative stigmas in gaming and why they still exist, and mental health and things like that, these more serious questions. But after answering that ourselves, we'll kick it over to you to tweet your responses to the question over on our Twitter at GPGC Podcast, or our email over at bonusaccessory@gmail.com, and we'll read some of the responses the following week. Last week's question: which IP that is making its return do you think has the most writing on it and needs to be a smash hit for said IP's longevity? Fable or Perfect Dark? And XX Spartan Fire XX078 on Twitter said Perfect Dark due to its inactivity for so long. This week's question, Mike. Sean Layden, former president of Sony Worldwide Studios, recently said, and I'm kind of paraphrasing a little bit, that he didn't believe that the subscription on-demand models, a Game Pass or anything like that without saying Game Pass, are sustainable long-term for game development. Kind of the conversation we were actually having a few minutes ago. But it's not necessarily sustainable for the budgets within gaming and whatnot. Do you think that's correct, even with how successful Game Pass is and how much more successful the trajectory of that model looks like it's going to be?
Yeah. Uh, I, mm, I
Tough
just
one.
don't. I don't understand. I'm not knowing. I'm not so much in the know per se about what it takes to develop games, that I don't know how much of a drain this is on resources.
Mm-hmm.
I think that on-demand models are going to be around a lot longer than we would think because of the Game Pass success.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, Microsoft's dumping tons of money into it, tons of resources into it, so I don't see why it would go away quickly. And I feel like Sean Layden, I mean, he's the former president of Sony Worldwide Studios, so I don't know if he's taken a shot here or not, but I would think that it's going to be more feasible than you would think, especially if you have a company like Microsoft willing to, dole out the money.
Yeah, and that's where I think it's going to be more like, of course there's going to be specific cases for specific, things that pop, or specific points of this argument where you can point to and say, oh, look at that, well, of course this game didn't make X, Y, and Z because it went to Game Pass or something like that. Of course, that also may just be, hey, this game didn't review well, hey, this game wasn't marketed properly, hey, this game wasn't XYZ. Like, there's more factors than that. But I think I think he means in general not just Game Pass, but I think he also means PlayStation Now and stuff like that. But more so, I think obviously Game Pass is the bigger one because they're like, or I guess I should say not bigger, but it's more prevalent to this conversation because we're seeing games specifically developed within, first party studio exclusive games developed that are purposely day one going to be available on the service. Not like an EA Play where you get, 10 hours of a trial for the game and then you got to pay for it, and then the game a year later comes to the service. No, it's day one. Halo Infinite, you were able to play day one. No, granted, multiplayer is free, but Halo Infinite's campaign day one, as soon as it launches to everybody else in a store that you can go and buy it, you can play it on Game Pass. It is right there ready to go for you. So those experiences. But that's going to fall, like you said, kind of more on Microsoft and how they respond to it, because they're the ones who have the deep pockets. Maybe a Nintendo is the only other one who can really kind of compete with that if they want to do something like that. But it's that thought that almost like an EA has, where you look at EA and they're able to start taking more chances on EA originals, like, A Way Out and It Takes Two, and also, letting a Respawn make a Jedi Fallen Order, make a single player only experience that people have been clamoring for. That, yeah, it's not going to continuously be this revenue stream, but hey, we have Madden and FIFA for that, and we're making tons of money off of, hut packs and, Ultimate Team packs in general, or microtransactions from there, or this and that. Like, we're making money hand over fist on those to begin with, that we could take a hit if that happens. And I think Microsoft's in that degree where they have so many avenues of hardware, so many avenues of software with Windows. Like, there's so many other avenues that they can get money in at, that if one game flops because of, it not performing well, it's not make or break. And I think that's where, sure, I think Sean's right to the point where when you're talking about this, hey, there's only, not every gaming entity could do something like this. Microsoft's uniquely positioned for that, but that doesn't necessarily make it wrong, I guess, if that makes any sense. So I personally don't think that's correct either. I think we're going to see eventually we're just going to see this, I think, just become more and more and more and more the norm of how we do with on-demand game. It's just how it is now. To what degree and what scale are these games? Kind of like I mentioned earlier in the show, like, we'll see, but it's kind of, I wouldn't be shocked that this just keeps going more and more, and we see eventually a Nintendo response to it, and eventually a true Sony response to it outside of PlayStation now. Like, something that is day and date on demand, like that style of gaming. And I think that's not that far off. But anywho, Mike, I think that's going to do it for our episode this week. Why don't you tell people where they can find you on the interwebs? Talk about all the nerdy stuff we talked about today. We're talking Halo Infinite. We're talking the Coalition. We're talking a bunch of nerdy stuff today. A bunch of good nerdy stuff. Where can people find you online to talk about all that?
You can find me on Twitter at TOYSXLDIER. That's Toy Soldier, and the second O is an X. Or you can find me on Twitch at MP_Toy Soldier.
Nice, nice. And as always, of course, I'm your host, Travis White, aka Travelus, on most internet platforms, including at Travelus_ on Twitter. That's TRAVLESS_. You can find me streaming time to time on twitch.tv/Travelus_, same as Twitter, which I will be this weekend at some point with the Halo Infinite technical preview. I haven't figured out the date. Watch Twitter, watch the show's Twitter, all that shit. You know what I mean. And if you want to play some video games with me, you can do so over on Xbox Live at just regular old Traveless. That's TRAVLESS. Shout out to the couple people who joined my fiance and I's Sea of Thieves game the other night, our server, and just popped in and started being like, yo, what's up, dude? What's up? Coming from the show. Took me up on that offer that I wasn't necessarily prepared for because I thought we were in a private server. But hey, that's cool. No matter what, we had a fun time. But anywho, ladies and gentlemen, this, of course, has been your newest episode of the Gamecast, your weekly go-to podcast for all things Xbox Game Pass, and, of course, PC gaming, including news, rumors, and conversation around them damn good video games. You can catch new episodes of the show when they drop each and every Friday morning on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, and all other major podcast services. So, of course, subscribe to us, rate us, review us, all that jazz wherever we get a podcast at, and follow us on Twitter at GPGC Podcast. Stay up to date with everything regarding the show, video games like, and our dope giveaways. And Mike, that's going to do it for our episode this week. Thank you everyone so much for listening, sharing, and being a part of our growing community. Game on, wash your hands, listen to the doctors, Black Lives Matter, and we will see you next week.